This is a special a panel this afternoon. I'm going to kind of help host it. Another Rory. So there's two. It's a strange thing. A few years ago, I met a guy named Rory with a wife named Rebecca, who was a homesteader, whose favorite author is Wendell Berry. It's a lot of strange similarities. And he's on stage with his son tonight. They live up in Minnesota. And we're going to kind of co-moderate this panel a little bit. They are in the midst of farming with your family. I've got a few questions that I put together, but I wanted to kind of set up this panel by talking about these three different groups. And I'm not going to do necessarily a great job of setting it up, but most of you know who Joel Salatin is and Daniel Salatin. Yes. Polyface Farm is, it's an internationally known brand. As Joel and Daniel mentioned, they just can't keep all the incredible food that they've been growing and raising on their shelf. It's just flying out the window or out the doors. People are coming and buying and coming to the farm, and they have conferences there. Both of them are constantly going around and traveling and either speaking or doing consultations. They have a really successful apprenticeship program at Polyface. They have a steward program. So many things going on. There's a brand new documentary about Joel Salatin called the Lunatic Farmer. How many of y'all have seen that? And it just keeps growing and growing. Joel, I don't know if he might not mention it to you, but when you get called by Robert F. Kennedy and say, "Can I get some advice on this?" You've done something. And so to talk about farming with your family, his paradigm and his situation is different than each of theirs. Theirs is on a scale. It's a vision that they have that's scaled to an incredible level. And so we're going to talk about that and the challenges of that. And then if you come here to Shawn and Luke Dougherty, they live in Ohio, not that big of a scale. You scaled the family much larger. How many kids do you have?
8.
8. So family at scale. They're Catholic, so it makes sense. Or homeschool, it makes sense. And Luke is the oldest, right? But they, same thing. They have a vision. It's a little bit of a smaller scale. They have some community up there. And they've transferred, they've got many children, so transferring the goal or the dream or the vision or the passion for farming or homesteading down to their children. They've kind of got a little bit of a different situation than maybe Joel and Daniel have. And then Rory Groves is in Minnesota, and he has, do you have 6 kids? 6 kids. And they're all pretty young. Ivor, are you 14 now? 14 down to 3? Abel's almost 3. So they're just in the thick of it. They've got a vision, and they're scaling their family while they're scaling their vision a little bit. But that puts a really neat opportunity for us to talk about a bunch of different things together. So first off, give everyone a round of applause for being here today. Let me start here, and we'll just go down. And again, so we can cover a lot of ground. Let's be fairly quick with because we're all good talkers. Let's say how old we are, each of us, and what do you think your unique skill set is?
I'm 65, and my unique skill set. This is really true. Getting out of the way of my kids in a certain sort of way, starting them, and then getting out of their way, I think, is what's worked really well for me.
I'm 38. That's a good answer. That's a good answer. Yeah. My unique skill set would be, I suppose, that it is a very wide skill set. I shear sheep. I shoe horses. I'm a carpenter. I've done some blacksmithing. I'm a butcher. I'm an entrepreneur. I do a lot of things. I can't say that I do any of them excellently, but I do them competently, I hope. I build houses. So I guess being a jack of all trades, maybe.
Joel?
So I'm 68, so I'm the senior in the group. Young guys over here. I guess I'd say that my skill set is certainly entrepreneurism. I would say imagining an opportunity, often that means hooking my wagon to an engine that's going somewhere. So I haven't really done that much, but somehow I've been able to find, or people have found me, and I can hook my wagon to somebody that to be able to see they're going someplace. Let's hook my wagon to them. And right now that wagon's hooked to Daniel. Whatever.
Just turned 44. So for those of you who know what this means, I'm in the 44 club. And for the next year. And for me, I'm the practical, boots on the ground, get it accomplished. And some people call it the pessimist, but I'm also the realist, whichever way you want to say it. But for me, the specific skill set is the realist practicality systems, like sequencing, what has to be done first, what has to be done second, etc. And at the same time, a lot of the staff would say that I like to have fun while I'm doing it. And so if you're not feeling something or having fun while you're doing it, it's a waste of a day. So whether it's sad, mad, happy, something, feel something while you're doing it.
Rory. Hi, Rory. Hi, Rory. We don't get to say that to each other. It's like an echo chamber. Hi, Rory. Hello, Rory. Hi, Rory.
My name is Rory. I'm 47, and I would say my superpower is that I love my family. And when I came from an engineering background, and so when I got on the farm, and I saw how the family could work together on a farm, a light bulb went on in my head that just never shut off, and I just became obsessed with this problem of how do we bring the family back together around a common mission in the modern day. So that would be kind of the impetus behind it, trying to figure out ways to solve that problem, which a lot of us have experienced, and it's been a real wonderful journey for us to be able to raise our family on a farm and to see all the fruit that's come of it.
What's your skill set, Ivar? And how old are you, 14?
I'm 14, and I would say that my unique skill set would be more in the way of like detail work. I'm very attentive to detail. I get caught as a perfectionist sometimes, and that can be a blessing, but I can also get in trouble for it sometimes. So I try to wield it to my advantage. But I love doing things with an order and doing it right the first time. And so I raise sheep and I raise rabbits and love working on our farm. You know, we have a little homestead, and I just love working with animals in the garden, all that kind of stuff. And I've also been working to learn woodworking, which is another opportunity that I have that I really think I can put my skills towards, and really just, you know, make that be a blessing for my future, you know, my future career and such. And with farming and woodworking, I just see such a future there, you know. And so right now at 14, I'm doing as much as I can, you know, to set myself up. So I don't have tons of life experience, but I'm wanting to gain that. And so I'm just trying to put my hand to whatever I can.
I feel fairly certain when I was 14, I was only trying to get down the hill on a skateboard. How sad that is. Let's talk about the difference in generations and cultures today. Joel, each of us, let's say on the father's side, thinking about the way that you grew up, which is different than your father's, but as you took on this vision that really has so much goodness in it, and the hope is to pass it on, but the challenge that you might have had, you know, in your day to make that transition or to hold it or to get there, what do you see the difference that they've got to deal with today, or that your children have had to deal with, let's say as they're, you know, in their 30s and 40s? And then the next generation, just those challenges and your experience of those and anything you have to share about that.
My mom and dad were from the generation that absolutely believed in the government, believed in the school systems, believed in the medical systems, believed in all that. I was that next generation that was beginning to question that stuff, but I was sure that I would make it. There was no question that, and I'm not talking about me personally, I'm just talking about the hurdles in front of us were, look, there's going to be jobs, and there's going to be money, and there's going to be, and all of those things, and those things were available to my generation, where you could do that. I'm watching my kids really struggle with, first of all those systems that my parents believed in are a disaster. You can't believe in any of those. And we were kind of ahead of a lot of people opting out of those, and we did. But I am watching my kids really struggle with how do you make enough money? How do you you're going to be able to talk to it better than I am. I don't know if you wanted to hear the kids yet, but it's certainly a struggle. But for me, there was never a question that, look, the system works enough that I'll always be able to have a job, and I'll have retirement, and I'll have all those kinds of things. I was the tail end of that world. And I am sitting pretty good, and you guys are not.
Go ahead. So I would say for us, my dad was completely opposite of your parents. He headed out of the U.S. to Venezuela, after World War II. He didn't trust anything in the U.S. So my parents were mavericks, and I'm thankful every day that they embraced different. When you're a teenager, sometimes that makes you want to roll your eyes, but as you get older, you realize that convictional thing is not very many people live by conviction, and so my mom and dad did it. So I wanted to farm, and Dad was an accountant, Mom was a school teacher. Grew up there. It was basically a glorified homestead. We grew all our own food. We milked a couple of cows, we raised a couple of pigs, but it was not a business. It was not a going concern. And so, how do we get into this? And so for our beginning, it was drive a $50 car, never eat out, never go anywhere. It was all about how cheaply can we not live on anything, and we actually pushed that down to where we were living on $300 a month, which is pretty low. And we lived in the attic we made an attic in the apartment in the house, farmhouse. And so for us, but it was just us. Teresa was my tractor driver, and so there was nobody else around for a very, very long time. And that is completely different than we watched our kids grow up. We became successful. Money wasn't nearly as difficult. And there were tons of people around. Those two things, not being pressed so hard with money and always having lots of people around, I think it does affect just how you view things.
So the difference, so I'm 47, so I'm the same age as Daniel, basically. But, I'm Generation X, and I think about the difference between my own parents and my generation, and definitely what I'm hearing is true. My parents, much more trusting of the system. The government says they have, what they say, 2.5 children. They have to round up, call it 3. Whatever the USDA recommends is kind of, the pyramid food food pyramid, all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, that was my my upbringing as well. But Generation X, I began my career right into the middle of the dot-com collapse. Again, you all remember that in 2000. And then, what was it, like a year later, we had 9/11, where we didn't know if the whole thing was coming down. And then we kind of patched back up after that. And then a couple years later, we had the housing collapse, we had the stock market collapse. So, I was young in my career when I just came to the conclusion, I don't think I can trust the status quo to be there for me at the end of all of this. I don't know where this is all going, but if I want to have a future that's sustainable, I'm going to have to create it. I'm going to have to bring it home. I'm going to have to figure this out myself. And I think that was probably a formative period in raising our own family. And I think even moving to the farm, there's definitely overtones of preparedness in it. That's not the key reason for it. We're looking for quality of life. But there was an element of we cannot any longer just assume that other people are going to come to our rescue and provide everything that we need. We have got to regain some of this knowledge, skill, fortitude, competence. You talked about, 100 years ago, 90% of Americans were proprietors, which means they owned their own businesses. And today that's 10%. So in a 100-year period, we've gone from being an entrepreneurial society, an owner society, to a wage worker, employee kind of society. And the kind of shift that does to someone to stop thinking for themselves in a degree of planning for my future, preparing my family for inevitable consequences or catastrophes. It removes a kind of a functioning skill set in a thought pattern that entrepreneurs instinctively have to have, because you're constantly fighting to survive every day. So I think that early on in my career, I kind of shifted into this mindset, and it just affected everything. I thought, we homeschool our children, we trying to raise as much of our own food as possible. Home economy is a huge thing. That's kind of my thing right now, is trying to rebuild families into their own home economies. So that's where that's come from and how it's affected me in my upbringing and how I raise my family.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think you do yourself justice to some extent. What Dad taught us boys, and I'm one of 6 boys. We have 2 sisters as well. I have 6 children. It runs in the family. Dad taught us that whatever you want to do, if you know how to live frugally and you pursue that thing, that can be your living. And I think that is still true. I think it is less true than it was when you said it. But you also raised us. It's interesting. I hear you speak for your dad's generation saying, they trusted the system. You're talking about bridging that gap. You did not raise us to trust the system. You didn't raise us to distrust the system. You raised us to some extent, to ignore the system. And I have always loved to do real things, and so I pursued real things, and that's my life path so far, is what real things can I do? And it's been good.
Daniel, what would you add to that?
What he said was correct in the fact that the differences. I think I like what Luke said about just ignoring and just doing our own thing. The idea of not being allowed to do something was fairly foreign to me. So just doing what you wanted to do, not being able to do whatever you wanted in discipline, but the world was your oyster, right? You could do anything. So yeah, I don't have a lot to add there. I just think we had a lot of opportunity, and we felt like if you, for me, I look at it this way: if the land is there, then there's opportunity, and when you're still on this side of the dirt, as they say, you have something to offer and you have a chance, and so keep after it. You've got something to offer. So.
Let me ask this. So Rory, you have. I was with you last night. So you're raising your kids, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering. This is something you talk about: is at what age, when is it too early, or when are they old enough to begin being able to, the seeds you want to sow inside of them, they begin to germinate in that soil inside their hearts. I want to talk about that, but I also really want to talk about that it isn't that we're trying to make all of our children farmers. And then we need to delineate the difference between that. We don't want them to be exactly like us, doing exactly, and it feels like if our children did not grow up to be farmers, or they don't turn, they've walked away from God, and they've gone astray, and we failed. It's much more complicated than that. And it's more complicated generationally and all of that. So let's talk about that. The reason I say it is for you, my guess is you want the kids to grow up and want to do these real things. Not that IT isn't real. Oh, you can say that. Yeah. Or whatever it is. But it's not a matter of success and fail. It's more about, whoever wants to share a little bit about that, because like you have your own 6 kids now. We baled hay the other day. And your 4, one of your brothers who's 21, maybe, Raymond, 17. That's your brother who's 17. And your son who's, Cale, 16. And your 2 daughters who are 15 and 14, something like that. 14 and 13. They are baling, and they're little farm kids. I mean, they're big farm kids. And they have it inside of them already. And I'm sure you're already deeply concerned about the culture and the pull of the culture. But can we talk about that desire that's kind of in our hearts, that we want our children, the balance between, we're trying to instill something, but it's not failure, because they are their own people. And it's very difficult for all of us. Anything that we can share for those who have gone through it, that are going through it now, that we feel like we've lost a child to the world. But maybe not, and then maybe someday they'll come back and they'll want to be back to the roots. How do we process it as they're little? How do we process it as they're old? Anything you can share would be great. No, go ahead. Anybody? Yeah, go ahead. Anybody? Yes.
I'd like to start an answer to that. Not the definitive, but I'll start. And that is that you have to start by loving people. You gotta love people. And when the first question, I probably should have said, what's your gift? It's loving people. I really do love people. And so I think if you really do love people, you're not going to condition that on what they choose. And so we never demanded anything. In fact, I told Daniel, we had people saying, "Hey, come and start a chicken operation in Argentina for me," and stuff, and he never wanted to leave. You can speak to that, but I'm just suggesting that if you just love for who they are and unconditionally, then they know that if they're there, that's fine. If they're not, it's fine. And this goes way back. I'll finish. When I came back to the farm full time, we wanted to name it, and I can remember it like yesterday. Dad and I were talking about what do we name it. We were going to incorporate as a business. Remember, he was a tax accountant, so he knew all the tax ramifications and everything. Let's be a corporation, okay? So he just off the cuff said, "Well, we'll be Salatin Inc." I mean, that Ford Motor Company. And I remember like yesterday saying, "Whoa, wait, no, Dad." I said, it's one of the times we disagreed. I said, "This is way bigger than our family. This is way bigger than that. It shouldn't carry our name. There may be a day when a Salatin isn't running this thing." And I had that thought early on, because I didn't want to lock my success or failure into the trajectory that our kids would be in. And so that's just an example of how you structure to actually identify or create wiggle room for that next generation. Because very seldom is everybody gonna hoe to your row. There's gonna be we're just too different. But everybody needs to know that they're loved unconditionally, whatever path they choose.
Go ahead. There's a whole lot of thoughts on it. I mean, you're talking about child rearing in a sense, and I think there's a couple of points to make. One is, primarily we are stewards of what God has given us. Children are a gift from God. It says that in the scriptures. And we're stewards first and foremost. Part of stewardship is trying to discern what are the gifts God has put in this person and cultivate and steward, right? It says that one plants the seed, another waters, another cultivates, but God makes it grow. So your role as a parent, and you all know this because if you're parents, because you see how differently they come out. They have bits of you, but they're different. And they're supposed to be different. And you're not supposed to conform them into dad 2.0 or mom 2.0. You're supposed to steward their gifts and develop their gifts. You, mom and dad, that's the big thing. Not teacher, not high school guidance counselor. Mom and dad have everything they need to steward their children into mature, productive, healthy adults. The thing that I would say is that Wendell Berry has a quote on this, and he essentially says the goal is not to try to make replicas of ourselves, but to give our children choices that they can intelligently make as adults. And for me, what I want to do, I could teach my children how to do some work on a computer, but my first goal is to teach them how to grow food, how to subsist basically off the land, how to work with their hands, how to have a work ethic. Believe me, if there's any young people in this room today, the number one trait that employers are looking for is not a 4-year college degree. There's all kinds of things coming out from the Fortune 500 companies that are no longer requiring a college degree. They are looking they say work experience, but really what they're looking for is work ethic. People who know how to work, because we have hordes of young adults coming out of colleges that don't know the first thing about work, but they have all the degrees. So you teach your children how to work. What better place could you choose to teach your children how to work than on a farm, where a 2-year-old can literally get involved in picking berries, and you might actually get some berries in the bucket as well. But anyway, so that's what I would say. It's so much more about stewardship. And Ivor, he touched on something when he said he's very detailed. And I saw that when he was 3 and 4 years old. And I prayed about it. What is this potential weakness? We might see it as something that's a weakness or a struggle in our children. Might actually be their strength, that God has designed them with some kind of strength. And I just, over a period of a couple of years, I kind of thought, I bet, he might really excel in a detailed type of profession working with his hands, which would be woodworking. And so that's been a bit of our journey that we've started down this road, but also it's a choice he can make as an adult. He doesn't have to do any of these things. They're choices. He's got them if he wants to continue in that.
Daniel or Luke?
I'd have a fairly long talk about this, so I'll try to put it down in 2 minutes. And that is just that when I share about this, it's really important, and I'll try to get through this because it is very personal, is that the scripture also talks about raising up the child in the way they should go, not the way you want them to go. And I think that's really important, is that we all are coming, we're sitting here, you're coming to this festival, you want to do this. I want to do this, you want to do this, this whole crew wants to do this. And it's a life passion, it's a free time thing, it's a hobby, it's a recreational side hustle, whatever. There's a lot of things that this can fall under, but it's very, very personal and inspirational to you. And that's great, and that's why we're able to be here because of you, and that's wonderful. The scary part is that your children might not look at it as quite as exciting and adventurous and as awe-inspiring as you have and do and will. Doesn't make it wrong or bad, it just makes it very different. And so I think that the challenge having to separate the passion and the dream from yourself and from your acceptance and your love is the key component to the child or the whatever feeling that they're accepted and launched and truly valued. And so I have learned this about myself in the last couple of years, is that I am not a very good human being. I'm a very good human doing. And that's a strong suit, right? That's okay. But I'm not a very good human being. And to try to separate the human doing from the human being is the fundamental part of that, what you were talking about, of finding out what they're really about. And so, because it is a life's passion for me and possibly for you, it is hard and very personal when your children don't want to do what you're doing. And trying to separate that to really, truly value what they're doing that's different from you as their calling from God. It's going to be different. They're individual. They're going to stand before God. You're going to stand before God not as a family, as individuals. And this kid, they're going to stand by themselves individually. And so they have to answer that call, and it will look very different from what you are called to do. And that's it in a summary, but there's a lot more to say on it. But just separating what you do from who they are and from who you are as a mom, as a dad, as a child, as a grandchild, all of those things is very, very important to that unconditional acceptance.
Now, 30 years ago, you bought our property, and you raised 6 of us boys there.
Eat it.
And our sisters. And we all worked together on that farm. And we all love working and living on that farm. And I do a bunch of different things. I now have a small place like that. Thomas is an architect. James is in the Air Force. John Paul is a tractor technician. William is a brick mason, timber framer. Brandon still we're figuring out. The girls we're still figuring out. So none of us are doing what you're doing. But I think what you said is very important. It's about love, and we felt love, and we knew what Dad was really telling, what Mom and Dad's life was telling us, and what Mom and Dad's life told us was to keep the faith, which we've all done, to honor our spouse, and to put our families first. And so that's meant different things for each one of us. And for none of us has it meant being a mirror image of you. So that's all I have to say.
So this life's pretty short, but the eternal life is really long. And I want to have a great big party with my family on the other side. So I don't really care what they do as long as it's heading them on that trajectory. That this is going to be a really big party in heaven when we're all there. And but I do find that when I watch people make choices here in this life, that when they are making choices of the urban life, life that is a life of convenience, life that when those things are the drivers, I don't know that they're heading on that trajectory as clearly as the people who are providing for themselves, who are farmers, who are... I think that it's more natural. God put us in a garden, and I do think that is a natural progression, and it's easier, it's more compatible to heaven. I think when we go to heaven, we're going to find a whole lot of people that understand farming. And I don't think when we're in heaven, and this isn't to say about here, I don't think there are going to be many people talking about computers.
Amen.
I want to bounce one more thing off of what you said. And I would just take it a step further. You said it's about learn how to grow your own food. And I would just take it a step further in that you're trying to use farming as a tool to grow responsible adults. And at the end of the day, that's what it's really about. And so I can be very happy about the fact that, you know, my 3 kids want to be, or are very responsible adults. Obviously, Luke's fairly responsible. I was on this way to being very responsible. And the idea that all the people want to hire my kids, want to work with my kids, want to be around my kids, and I think that's really, it's the tool. And I think it can be a lot of vocations, as you mentioned, you know, lots of different things. But that's the tool, the jumping off point to do this. And if you want to use farming to do it, great. And that, what Shawn said is actually, you know, is still very true as far as this is an agrarian culture. I mean, it's always funny to watch a, you know, fresh graduated skinny jean wearing pastor try to talk about sheep herding because it's kind of funny. But they don't understand it. But those are, you know, you grasp the gospel when it's a lot, when you understand it. But the idea of using that as a tool to grow responsible adults is the point. And that can be done in a wood shop, it can be done in a construction crew, it could be done in IT. A little tougher, but it can be. It can be with those right traits. Sorry, that was my last button up for that.
I would bet that there's a lot of people. How many of y'all are coming to this here? You're here, this new way of thinking and living a little bit later in life than you wish you had come. A lot of people. And how many of you have children that maybe it's already too late? They're already, you know, and when I say too late, they're 10, or they're 20, or they're 40, or whatever it happens to be. We're all coming to our senses whenever, you know, it's the world that Joel and I were talking about, the pendulum just it's swinging back hard right now. The next question I really want to talk about, you can all be thinking, but the question I want to talk about in a minute here is, what's the best advice you give to the families who are here for their children, where they are as they're learning and what they're doing? Any advice for farming, homesteading together for their children? While you're thinking about that, this is a question for Luke. Rory's kids are still at home. Daniel works on the farm, but you all, except for the youngest 3, you've all gone on, got married, everybody living. And I know the answer to this. How much conversation is happening about wanting in your hearts to come back home? What does come back home mean? Does it go back to mom and dad's, let's let all the like just this thing that's happening, whether it's in you and your wife, and your wife's family has a different home in Minnesota with another bunch of brother-in-laws and all those things. But what's inside of you as you taking these values and trying to figure out, do we want to go be together somewhere?
Well, you've seen us
Yes, sir.
Build cabins here for you.
Yes.
And that's the most fun we ever have.
Yeah.
We couple years we've come here, me and my brothers, and we've timber framed a cabin here for Rory. We timber framed one for a neighbor. That is the most fun we ever have. We just built Dad a house. Dad's house burned 2 years ago. The people here were wonderfully, wonderfully generous. We replaced that house with one that was much better. And that's the most fun we ever have, is being together, working with our hands, working on Dad's farm. A couple years ago, we went and framed up an addition for my brother in Philadelphia. We've gone and worked on John Paul's house out in Minnesota. That's heaven.
Yes.
Working with my brothers. So yes, when the right piece of property is being given away over on Yellow Tree, up above my dad's place.
Yeah, it's in your hearts, right? There's something about that just says we want to be together.
Absolutely.
If we can.
Right.
You can't figure it out.
So add that to the list of things you did right and showed us.
Yes. All right, Joel, let's start with you. Advice for people with their children, the best things you can do to raise your children to work alongside of you and potentially to have that work ethic, maybe want to stay with their hands in the ground or in the dirt a little bit, whether they go on and do something else. And maybe the worst thing you could do.
Oh, worst thing is easy. don't let them ever make a dime.
Make them work for you without paying them?
Yeah, treat them like slaves and call them slaves. I run into farmers. Yeah, my kid, that's good slave labor. It's terrible. It's like, I do a lot of consulting around the country, and these, rich people buy a piece of land, and I can't find good help. Can't find good. Well, what are you looking for? I'm looking for a farmhand. Oh, I shoot them in the kneecaps. Farmhand. It's a demeaning term. I'm sorry, it's a demeaning term. Call them a steward, creation steward, something, okay? But don't call them a farmhand. You'll get what you expect. So I think the worst thing is to micromanage and never let the child have an autonomous, true, credible opportunity. Which brings me to, I think the best thing is that you live with an upbeat opportunity mentality. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard me talk about, Dad passed away young. He was only 66 when he died. And Teresa and I had only been on the farm full time for 5 years. So we had just gotten through the 3-year, exhale time. And he called me, he's in his room there, he was ill. And called me in, he said, bring a pencil and paper. And I went in, and remember, Teresa and I had just literally gotten over the hill. We're gonna make it, the little engine that could, we're gonna make it. And he says, let's brainstorm how many salaries we could support on this little farm. And I still have the little yellow piece of paper in my files, one of my favorite gems in his handwriting of 22 full-time salaries from our little farm when Teresa and I were barely making it. That's opportunity fishing, and kids catch that. You know how many salaries we generate today? 22.
So, right, I'll let Ivar answer that question. So, Ivar, what would be the best way to keep the kids invested in what mom and dad are doing on the farm? Is that close enough?
Yes. And what's the worst thing you can do, Dad?
Well, I would say that the best thing you can do is just give your kids lots of opportunity. I would say that on our farm, I've been so blessed by just having so many opportunities and ventures. I'm an entrepreneur, and so I love starting new ventures up. Sometimes they go great, sometimes they don't. And so I would say one of the ways that my dad has really been able to steward me is just giving me the reins kind of to take command and responsibility in certain areas. And I think that's a thing that you don't think of from a lot of kids, but me being 14, I think kids love working hard and doing things if they feel like they have ownership in it and responsibility, if they're really invested. If it's just, a chore, like Joel was saying, slave labor, that's not going to generate a lot of interest in the future. And so I would say just having those opportunities, and what better way could you set your children up with opportunities than putting them on a farm? Because there's always stuff to do. There's always, responsibilities. And since I was probably 5 or 6 when I started checking eggs, and ever since I've been, my dad calls me the farm manager, and I do kind of all the animals and stuff, his chief shepherd. But I just think that for kids, they want to be invested in something and have responsibility over it. And I think that's something that can be overlooked. But there actually is like a passing on of the baton of responsibility to that next generation. And once I think kids can grasp hold of that, there's a lot more potential for the future.
Good.
There's a key element that sometimes we miss as that entrepreneurial families can miss, and that is so I use the term family economy not family business. And there's a reason that the term family business has a lot of baggage attached to it. And it's a lot of dysfunction, a lot of times will surround family business. And the reason is, so I explain the difference this way. I say a family business is about the business, and the family economy is about the family. And I would say the same thing about a homestead. If the homestead exists to serve the family, you're going to be okay. You're going to do well, and children are going to gravitate towards that kind of a life. If the homestead is a business and you view your family as essentially, what Joel was saying, is slaves to make the business work. It's all about the business. You're going to have rebellion against that. And one of the key ways to do it, I mean, I won't add to what Ira said because that's exactly right. But there has to be a way to both inculcate the work ethic required. You have to work hard. Look, all of us are lazy. We don't want to work hard by nature. We have to work hard. We have to push ourselves to kind of get out of that slothful attitude. One way to do that is to make it interesting, to give them ownership, and to know when to back off and know when to put on the pressure. And that is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not the same for every kid. It's not the same reward, carrot and stick incentive program. It is a daily pursuit of constant observation and constant experimentation. And you as moms and dads, you're going to have to discern constantly where your kids are at. But I will say this one little bit. Don't be afraid to push and don't be afraid to challenge. We don't want to back so far off that mom and dad are the ones doing all the work when the children are, playing video games or enjoying the air conditioning inside. There does need to be some element of that, but there's not a hard and fast rule that I can point to because I haven't run across it yet. It's a daily discipleship. Time together will give you that understanding more than anything else.
I think there have been a lot of good answers, and so I almost hate to add to them. But I guess what's going through my head is, one of the things you were getting at is there's a lot of people here whose children are already doing something else. And we're all doing something else. All of us children. And I don't see that as a failure. I don't see that as a failure to show us the value of self-sufficiency. And I see it affecting the way that they do each of the things that they do. I also anticipate that they're all going to gravitate more towards what I'm moving towards or what you've been doing. And the only thing I would add to what everybody else said is that humility and charity, if you don't have those two, if you're not bringing that to the table, you're not going anywhere.
So to get young people, so those of you who are parents out there, to get young people to follow along, I think you really do. I would kind of agree with Rory. You just need to say, look, this is how we live as a family, and you're expected to participate. To get older people to participate, I think that a journey that I would go on is to say, what's a shared need that we both have? So instead of me mandating to them, I would try and get them to talk to me, and if we could come up with a shared need, something that we really believe. And the thing that's really, again, that I think is our systems are so bad that it's easy to find those things, the medical system or the educational system or anything. What's a shared need that we have? And then I would try and build on that. Make that be my wedge and say, okay, if that's our shared need, if that's the thing we think we need, let's work together to try and get that thing, and then let's build off that.
Rory, how long is our panel till? Do you know? Is it till 3 o'clock, till 2:30? Can someone look at till 3? Rory, why don't I shift, and since you have children at home, and we have some of the older generations that have done it longer, some questions that you might have specifically for your family and other families like yours that you can ask. Yes, your questions for them.
My question is for the generation who've raised their children. Well, I guess one of the things that I've learned is, I touched on this a little bit, is the extreme difference in personality that every child has. And so you bring this first life into the world, and you're learning to become a dad based on the firstborn. And then you have more of them. You see, every single one of these, I'm starting over from the bottom. And so my question would be to those of you who have raised and successfully launched your children into the world, what are some ways that you have adapted to the different personalities, giftings of your children, but still kept the same culture of your family, the values and traditions, and been able to launch each of your children in their own unique ways into the world, but still kind of maintain your character as who you are as a family?
I did look for the things that they excelled at and really tried to make, that I perceived that they excelled at, or more the things that they were showing love for. And then I would try and provide opportunities that seemed to move them in that direction. So as they got older, I might not have that skill, but I bet I know somebody who does. And then I would try and set up some sort of mentorship maybe or something like that with them. And again, I do think that it's a lot of a parent getting out of the way and saying that's not really what I imagined, or but letting them go. And you already spoke to the fact that the thing that is often the most irritating thing they do ends up being their strength, the thing that is the thing that makes them who they are. And I think we have to be very tolerant of that.
Yeah, I would say, my oldest would, the other ones would say, don't give your present to him because it'll be in 50 pieces by the time he's done with it. And now he's a mechanic, so that's the way it works. And I think, and at the same time, what I was going to say was, don't give yourself the grace to accept those differences, right? Because, same family culture, same basic upbringing, same basic rules and plan and trajectory. And my oldest, if I give him a penny now, he will find a way to spend it between here and the front row. The second will have it saved probably until he'll get buried with it. And the third will work really, really hard to hit a goal and then stop. And it's the same thing. And so you look at that and you want to look at yourself in the mirror and go, oh, Dave Ramsey, you got to have a maternity, you got to have a fund, and you got to have a 3-month security safety fund, and you got to save, you got envelope plan, blah. That is not going to work for the oldest. Now I'd like him to be a little better, but the point of it, he's extremely generous, incredibly giving. If you need something, he will give you. He might only have a penny because he spent the other 5 pennies before. But if you need a penny and he's got it, he's going to give it to you. It might be his very last, but he's going to give it to you. So again, that's a caring, responsible, proactive adult. And so I have to look at my mirror in the mirror and say, that's still okay. I would like him to have a little more cushion in his life, but somehow it's working for him. And God is providing for him, and it's working. So I guess the boiling down is say, give yourself the grace to realize that God's calling on their life is different than yours. And so some of them might be asked to, sell everything and move to Africa. Some of them might be asked to move into an office and stare at a computer screen for the rest of their life. And you don't understand how that's possible. But it's what God's given them to do, and so they're going to do it. And you have to get out of the way and let them do it. And not beat yourself up for it. That's like, don't feel like a failure and don't beat yourself up for it.
I understood the question. You're asking how you make the firstborn, how you make the rest of the children as good as the firstborn.
No, as humble as the firstborn.
This isn't being recorded, is it?
Golden child, is it?
So it's while I ask Rory, ask a question to these people who successfully they've raised their children, they've raised children and stuff, and I'm sitting on the end and I'm just realizing I'm in like this weird place because I'm here, but you're not going to ask me that question because you can't really ask it to me because I have two older daughters who you can, but so I thought, boy, let's think about that for a minute. I want to talk about whether you're willing to or you don't want to, we've all got kids. Some of the things we've done really, really well. Some of the things we wish we'd have done better. What do we wish we'd have done better? Let me start with that. Now, I have two older girls, and I wasn't doing this. I was doing my best. I was doing the best I could do. And, but it was the best the world had to offer. And they're great, great girls, but do they understand what I'm doing and what we're doing now? Probably not. Are they supposed to? I didn't put it in them. How am I supposed to expect it from them? So it's kind of a different thing. All I can do is make the turn that God has me make. I have a little one who's 11 years old. I can have an impact on her life. And right now, it's kind of I'm a father who's raised children. And I had my own grandbaby, sort of, because I have an 11-year-old, and I get an opportunity to do something a little bit different. And so I'm kind of in both those places. And it's not failure, it's just different. The pendulum has swung inside of me. It's like the Wendell Berry book, The Unsettling of America. For me, that book was the unsettling of an American. It changed how I thought about everything. And so that doesn't mean it's going to change everyone in your family. Even if they have the book, even if you buy it and give it to them for their birthday. They might not be interested in it at all. But I do think, one of the things we could talk about here is what can we do, what could we have done better that I wish I'd have done better? What can we do that we haven't done yet? And so for me, one of the transitions is, I say this a lot, I want to do everything with excellence. I don't want to do it okay. I want to do it really, really well, whatever we're doing. And so craftsmanship, that's a brand new thing for me. I'm a guitar player and singer, and I'm a craftsman when I write songs, but making something out of wood, like what would I do with that? I'm not in the wood business, but I have an inherent feeling I should be making things. I should be a man. I should make things. And my wife, she just started, she's got a sewing machine, and the only thing she wanted for her birthday is a serger. I don't know what a serger is. I got her one. But she's really excited, and she's beginning to make aprons. She wants to make something. Will she sell them? I think so. But it's not about selling them or the money. It's something bigger than that. And our little one, Indiana, she spent most of the day today over in the schoolhouse because this year she started taking weaving classes. She's got a loom and she's been weaving, and so she's made a bunch of bookmarks and pot holders and all sorts of little things. And she's selling them, a little home economy, a little family. So she's selling them and she's excited about it. And she gets to make some money and buy some more loops and some more weaving stuff. And so what I wish I could have done better is know more sooner. I wish we can only do what we can do. And I don't have yesterday, and I don't know what tomorrow holds, but today I can do something different. And so I take my today very seriously, and I also try and go along with Daniel, and let's have fun while we're doing it. But we've got a great opportunity today. And so that's what I would do different is I would try harder at the age where I would try harder to figure out what matters. I didn't grow up with this guy. I didn't have somebody like, coming down, showing me, or even you guys, how you've been for your children. And so I've taken a long way to get here, and I think here's a pretty good place. I've still got a long way to go. And so what I wish I could have done better was I wish I could have made some of these transitions sooner and understand them more so that I could have added more to my family when they were younger. That's all. I can't do anything about that, but I can do better today. What would you do different? What do you wish you'd have done a little better?
Doing, what Daniel was saying, doing has always been important to me. There's never enough time, so I got to do something, and time has pushed me to, well, we got to do this quickly, and I wish, and I certainly could do this now, is be with the person that I'm with. Really, just be with them, and this is what the saints, I'm convinced the saints did, is when you sat down with a saint, you felt like you were the only person there. You were just totally with them. And I think when you were with Jesus, he didn't care about anything else but you. And that's what I wish I did that more. That when I was with somebody, I was giving them myself completely.
Yeah, I've been sitting here thinking, so I'm not like Rory over here. I'd rather work than do anything. I'm not lazy, I don't think. And I love to work. In fact, a lot of people call me a workaholic. So if there's one thing that I would change, it would be to knock off more, have more picnics, do more hot dog roasts on a fire, what I call commas, make more commas. But, Dad was a pusher, we got to get this done. I think I can count on one hand the number of times we ate out as a family by the time I was 18. Literally, we never ate out. He was a numbers guy, watching the numbers. And so I think you become an adult when you forgive your parents for all of their weaknesses. Because we can't go back and relive and redo all of the things that parents did wrong. All parents do things wrong. And I think when you finally agree or come to the point where you, with all their faults and frailties, they did the best they knew, you become an adult. Where you don't harbor that resentment, that vengeance, that offense in your heart. When you look biblically through the families of the Bible, they are rife with dysfunction. They are, Abel and Cain, first family, brother killed his brother. And then it just, Noah gets drunk, Abraham has Ishmael, and that's Jacob gets the blessing, runs off, and David, Eli, Samuel. Interesting about Eli and Samuel. Eli, God blamed him for his wayward sons. Samuel had wayward sons, but never got blamed for it. So there was something different about Eli and Samuel, about the way God treated them in their fatherhood, in responsibility for their kids. All I'm suggesting is that, life is life, and the longer you go, the more complicated it gets. And the older the kids get, the more complicated it gets. And so, I can look back and say, well, I wish I would have done more campfires and this and that and the other. But we have made a very large family because I was a pusher. And we have all these apprentices and interns that become like family. We started all that. And Teresa said, this is really cool. We get to have more kids. I don't have to get pregnant, And that's the way we look at it. And so you could say, well, that's not very, family oriented, but I would suggest that maybe that's an expansive family mentality. So there's a lot of different ways. I think sometimes we can almost become a family cult. And don't throw tomatoes, but we can become that to the point where we worship family to the exclusion of taking care of a more important vision or calling. And I'm rambling, but those are just some thoughts that I would throw out there. And I just keep coming back to opportunity. And so if my greatest offense is that I've been so enthusiastic about my purpose and my project and God's anointing to touch literally millions of families because of my enthusiasm, then I hope that our kids will forgive me that enthusiasm and realize, well, we had another project, and it's okay.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I was just going to add to that the just the trajectory, I guess, of where they're going, and just looking back on like what would be done. I think the upside of where I am right now is I can say that I've had the blessing, and this is something from a kid's perspective and a parent's perspective, the blessing of knowing my life's calling early. Not everybody gets that, and I admit that I was very, very blessed to be able to know what my life's calling was early and pursue it, and that's a real blessing. And so giving as Ivor said, give yourself a lot of opportunities. So give your kids a lot of chances, let them go check out every vendor here. I mean, go check it out, and see what they want to do, because that's the great opportunity, because once they find that calling, that's when they're going to really plug in and go somewhere and do that. And then really enjoy that life's calling as you go, and not get the FOMO, the fear of missing out on something, because we're very easy in our culture, specifically, our culture is very loud at elevating some trajectories over others. And so really, if you feel like that your calling is to, be a janitor, like lean into that calling. That is it. That is the best absolutely possible thing you could possibly be doing. And don't be jealous of something else. And so know that calling and lean into it.
Good. In terms of, what you wish we'd have done different, I would just say, I've been, in Joel, I was speaking a little in jest. I hope I could apply for an internship on your farm. You could really show me what for. But I have a tendency to stress out over the small stuff. And I think what I've learned a lot about a life of faith, because this is what it all is, who in their right mind would go back to homesteading in the 21st century? Don't we have farmers to grow that stuff? It's so countercultural. Y'all are here on some level or another because there's something in your hearts that had drawn you to do something that is countercultural. I mean, I guess you could say it's a mini trend, but it's not trendy in the sense of growing your own food and working hard is against the grain. And all I'm saying is that it's faith that got you here. And it's faith that got me to where we are on our farm and doing what we're doing with our family. And if you ever try to take a step of faith in the human nature, in the human flesh, it will stress you out. The economics, all of the stuff can get very stressful very quickly. And I think that's one of the things where I have allowed a burden to come in many cases, as attached to a dream, that if I could learn to walk more by the faith of it and trust in the Lord and trust in that He will guide me. He got me here to this point. He will guide me when it's time to move to the next point. I think it would have been easier on my family, because you can't help it, the stress kind of oozes out of you onto the rest of the family, your attitudes and the shifts, and that it's never proved to be a worthwhile thing to vent to my family about whatever hardship is going on. But I've been learning through that, and I hope that my children can forgive me as I'm still growing up in this role as well as a father.
Let me go ahead and shift so we get a few minutes for Q&A. If you have if you have a question for the folks up here, raise your hand. We've got time for about 15 more minutes for questions. Right back here? Yes, sir. Anybody else, when they're done, raise your hand.
It's not really a question, but that young man down there at the end, I tell you, he's one of the most well-spoken, wise, almost like Solomon.
Jenny, go ahead. We'll get one from you right here. Oh, or maybe not. Right here. She's right here.
So Rory, you said, I would try harder to figure out what matters. You know, there's a lot of young families here. How do you figure out what matters?
Well, for me, it's been a real faith journey to figure out what it really comes to. What is it that I'm really looking for? The world's going to say it's climbing a ladder, or it's money, or it's financial security, or it's comfort. And sometimes we have to go through it, all those things, to realize there is no there there. I wish I could have found out earlier there is no there there. I didn't have a father or someone else go, I didn't have anybody saying, believe the system, don't believe the system, ignore the system. It'd taken a long, long time. So I would say that from myself would have been, I wish I could have understood some of that a little bit more so that I could be in a place. Joey and I sang this song, That's Important to Me. And it's a funny thing because she was so solidly who she was. And I used to I lift her up all the time, and I wrote the song with her. But I didn't spend much time thinking about what was important to me. I just admired that she knew what was important to her. It took a long time to realize those things are just as important to me, and to really have them inside of you and stand on them. But the moment you stand on them, it starts to divide everybody. And that's a hard thing. Some of it's fear and all those other things, but I would just say, ask the hard questions sooner, especially in your faith journey and your heart.
I'd like to just add, that's great, Rory. For me, how do you know what matters? What matters is my faithfulness to what I think God wants me to do. And if I do that with all my heart, soul, and mind, as enthusiastically as the Dallas cheerleaders cheer for the Cowboys, Dad used to say,
spoken by a man without a TV or that doesn't watch football.
Right.
It's really hard because the Cowboys are terrible.
Well, that's why you watch the cheerleaders. But anyway, Dad used to say, everything we do should be a burning bush, and the world still stops to look at burning bushes. And that's just a good one.
Yes. Next question is somebody back there. There's a couple hands up there.
When you have the blessing of generations on your farm, but as a parent and as a child, how do you go about honoring God's word in leaving and cleaving when you're still so tethered to your family?
Say that last part again.
Can you say that last part again?
Yeah, sorry. How do you go about honoring God's word to leave and cleave with your family when you're still so tethered to your generational family?
Yeah, like you live on the farm. I don't know anything about that. But you left, right? Meaning, like, how do you honor the word about leaving and cleaving leaving your family, cleaving to create a new family when you live right on the same farm or right in the same spot? Good. When you actually don't really go anywhere. Yeah, I mean, I moved from one house to another house on a 4-wheeler, and and I say now I'm not moving ever again. It's just going to be turnkey, have at it. I'm just taking my guns and leaving, and that's that. I think it is a very valid question, and it is something to be wrestled with. It's going to look different for every family. I think creating your own habits and routines are very important, even to the point of like not necessarily going to that family for Thanksgiving. It's okay, like changing that up. So just the normal married stuff that you have to talk about of like, where are we spending Thanksgiving? Where are we spending Christmas? Where do we spend Easter? And at the same time, creating some own memories for yourself. You could do it through place of worship. Like, these are all real examples for me. We don't go to the same church, not because I hate their church. I just don't want to go to their church. I feel like God's called me to a different church. And so just paying attention to that and doing that. And it also gives you a little bit of freedom to like bring up a prayer request in like small group that's maybe a little more personal, that's not something you'd want to share if your parents are there. So just having that little bit of stuff, those are some, here I am jumping into practicality, I can't help myself, but those are the practical ways to like literally like we have a separate family, and then there's a lot of emotional stuff too that I'm bad at, so I won't address, but just the physical part of like, okay, we can do something different, and those little steps like that do matter.
So, let me just add, because I'm going back a generation, because when Daniel and Sherry got married, they built a house on the farm, partly because when he was 14, Ira's age, we started sending him with friends to build houses that did construction, because you don't want to live in a house that I built. And so Daniel became very good at construction by doing that at a very, very young age. And so they built a second house on the farm, but we were not struggling as much then. We had a sawmill. We had resources that we could do. And Teresa and I got married, we had nothing. I mean, we literally had nothing. And so we built the apartment in the attic of the house. We didn't even leave the house. And didn't make a separate entrance. But part of that leaving and cleaving is the other generation. So what Mom and Dad did, when they wanted to come and visit us, they would come up and knock on the wall at the top of the stairs before they came up to the attic, seventh heaven, and knock on the door. It was just enough respect. This is their space, not ours. And so both generations have to give latitude and give space for scheduling, memories, type of furniture, whatever. All those things need to be autonomous.
Yeah, so when my wife and I got married, she's from Minnesota, and her folks live on a farm in southeast Minnesota. And we built a house on the back of their property. That was the first house that we lived in, Straw Bale House. We lived there for 5 years. It was a wonderful experience. God called us elsewhere. Now we live 45 minutes from you. And practically, I think you guys have said a lot of it. You need to maintain boundaries. But it's going to be different for every couple and in-laws. But maintaining boundaries. I think two things that come to mind are know what the priorities are. Your family comes first. Your spouse comes first. The church gives us some pretty clear, the family comes first. After that, it's virtue, personal virtue. It's humility and charity. It's the only way that anything works, I think.
Next question. Come on up here. One of these.
Thanks. Hey, my name's Chris. I'm 53 years old. I'm single, no kids, and I have a farm down in Culleoka, not far from here. And Daniel, this question's for you. I was hoping you could share a little bit about what you told me the other day about legacy and young farmers in a situation where I'm not
right.
trying not to have a kid to give the farm to.
Sure. And I think several panelists have already touched on a little bit about that larger legacy. Legacy does not have to be family. I think that's where a lot of you, so those of you who raised your hand said, I'm older, my kids are not interested in farming, for legacy. And that means you begin leaning into people in this space to carry on the legacy that you feel is important, which is, care for the, like if you have a piece of land, you want to see it continue to maintain in this way. You don't want to see it being like a CAFO or pesticides or sprayed with herbicides or whatever. So how do you begin pairing and mentoring and grouping up with someone who you can become a mentor? And so that's the, our steward program, where you think about like all the things that we've done there and just the opportunity to spread that legacy around. And so I think that's the opportunity to build that and to bring them in. And we don't know what that looks like. I mean, it can be partnerships, it can be subcontracting, it can be willing it to them, it can be rent to own, it can be buy to own, it can be all sorts of things. But beginning to reach out and build that bigger family, if you will, on a property that's exciting and creating that bigger community on your property.
Next question. Right here.
I really appreciate you guys coming out, and I grew up with both parents, and I don't say this from a perspective of, what about this side? But I'm genuinely curious, how important, because I know it's varied, is the maternal side of bringing on the whole family? Because we as men are just one part of it. We're the primary part, biblically speaking, we are at least the 51%, right? But the other, if anything, 49, or I don't want to reduce women to numbers, or my future wife to numbers, not at all. But what I'm saying is, what does that look like? I don't know. I mean, I'm not married yet. I will be soon, but, what does that look like for y'all?
Make sure that you marry up.
I was going to just say, behind every successful man is one amazed woman.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And she is the heart. She's the heart of the family. And when we are looking, and again, I think that the vision is correct, that she's looking here and we're looking out. So we're looking more toward where we're going, and she's looking at how we're getting there or making sure that we're holding together. But she is the heart, and it's really important that the men pay attention. And we won't understand what they say, but we have to understand what they feel and where they want to go and what they want, and we're not very good at it.
If we were doing a marriage panel, we maybe go a little further on this, but I'd say there's two things. One thing is that husbands, you need to lead with a vision that inspires your family. If you don't have something that inspires your crew, they need to know they're going somewhere. If they don't have that, it becomes incredibly difficult to live up to the expectations. So there's the burden on the men, but on the women there is also, women absolutely can limit the potential of the vision God has for your family, in the sense that they might be held back with fear, with insecurity, with all kinds of other things. If the woman is not willing to go on an adventure with her man and pursue whatever it is that God may have for your family, you can limit, you can cut off what the potential of that family was. So it takes vulnerability and it takes risk on both sides to really make a marriage work. But like I said, that's another topic probably for another panel.
One more question before we call it. How about right here?
On your journey of homesteading, I'm sure that you've encountered a lot of risk. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, what's the greatest risk you've taken that's ended in failure? And then maybe what's the greatest risk that you've taken that's ended up successful? And what did God teach you through both?
I'll actually, so I say, quite often, the good fruit is always out on a limb. And so from my family and my son, I ought to write a song about that. So I've just experienced it again and again every time I've gone out on a limb in faith. There have been times it hasn't been the fruit I had in mind, but that's usually where the good fruit is. It's usually not in some comfort zone where we're just hanging here waiting on the good fruit to arrive. it's usually out on a limb. And it happens again, for me again and again. We've never done a homestead festival. We have no idea that we could do it or that it would be successful. And it's like, it's one of the scariest things that you can do. It's a bunch of you, but it's also one of the most rewarding things. A lot of us, our lives feel very, sometimes we want our lives to be filled with more, but we don't want to do anything more. We just want them to be filled with more. And if you want something to change, something has to change. So my own biggest journey is this year, if you followed our story at all. This is the year, this last year, it's been a long, which is Port of Jenny's, is just this place of complete and total surrender and repentance. That's a big one for me. Like even what Joel said is like submitting to God's will completely in your life is all the things I've ever done. Nothing is as terrifying as that. And it's been the greatest journey I've ever had. It's been so much fun. So that's mine. What would you guys say? Anybody?
I would say that one of our biggest risks that turned out positive was starting the apprenticeship program. We had a guy who said he wanted to sell eggs for us and needed 600 dozen a week. And we knew we'd been turning down young people for several years that wanted to come and do apprenticeship, but we didn't have enough, and so we didn't have enough work. Dan's doing everything, why do we need somebody else? And so anyway, when that came along, we want 600 dozen eggs a week. Suddenly that opened up. So we built the apprentice cottage. We started the apprentice program. We put in an extra 1,000 laying in. Started the egg program. All that happened in 1 year. That was a big jump off the cliff. It was very risky on a lot of levels, and turned out to be fantastic. Because now we've got such a big family now that we've launched and helped and germinated all these young farmers. So that was a big, the continuing risks that bite us are either, I'd say two things. One is continuing to try to do something with someone who's trying to sandbag you and is not in alignment, but you keep hoping it'll get better. It doesn't. And so a lot of people will say, who hire people, biggest mistake in business is once you realize things are going south, is to put off, and try to think that it's going to get better. The other one is similar, and that is to let an account go too long and not pay. And we've been stuck with some big $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 accounts receivable that are very, very costly. But you keep hoping again. They were paying, now they're not paying, but they're going to pay. I'm sure they will pay. They mean well. And next thing you know, you're $30,000, $40,000, and suddenly they're out of business and you're out of money. And so those are risks.
I spent a year working on a potato farm in Montana, moved my family up to Montana. That was a risk I took that I would say, in some ways you could say, didn't turn out well. It was a commercial operation. I ended up disliking that even more than I anticipated. A lot of good things came out of it. So I think I would struggle a little bit to look at things in my life and say, nothing good came of that. So it didn't turn out the way I expected, let's put it that way. Not at all. The biggest, best risk I ever took was getting married. And speaking for us, I think I can say homesteading for us is because we're married, in some sense. We have a family. It is the best way to raise a family. So it's kind of like chicken and egg there a little bit, but it's a risk that we took, and it was the best risk.
I took the risk of not going to college. So I took the big leap of going total counterculture and saying, I don't need college, I'm not going to college, and I'm skipping it. And then along with the question in the back was staying on and in the family business, which is incredibly risky. It'd have been a lot safer for me to go become an assistant manager with a construction company or whatever, because I would have been outside of family, 8 to 5, lots of time, and that would have been, so that was risky. So 2 big risks that turned out well was skipping college, because you're automatically 4 years ahead of the competition, and you're and then staying in a family business, which is incredibly risky.
I would just say my biggest risk was walking away from a very good paying job to start over with a family economy, and it is the best decision I've ever made. Yes. I want to wrap up with 2 things. There's a couple that I met over at the meet and greet. Are you here? They might not be here. They're right here. This was just randomly they just come in and they're just brand new in homesteading and making better choices with their lives and not very far along. They're just a little bit, but she, just by making those choices, she's dropped 80 pounds, he's dropped 100 pounds. Their whole life is completely different. And as they would say, it's not really about the food or the weight or the clothes sizes. It's about the impetus of change, and that just leads, as Joel says, is once you begin to question where your food comes from, you begin to question everything. The other thing I want to mention is Stanley's right here. Stanley Summer. What's your wife's name? Helen. That's right. I should know. So a number of years ago, we have always done gardens and chickens, but we decided to get in the cow business to start raising our own beef. And through a series of events, we heard about South Pole cattle, and we went to Alabama and bought some South Pole cows, and they've been just a blessing. And we've been mentored by this family in Alabama. Today is the 6th of June, 2025. And is their 50th wedding anniversary. Oh my God. And their son and his family, so it's a multi-generational farm, and I'm just honored that you guys, there's a lot, they're happening around us. It's not just on the stage. You'll find other people. And anyway, we're thankful. Please give everyone a round of applause. Thank you for being here. Have a great afternoon. The concert starts at 6 o'clock tonight. There's a couple of more events, speakers events. Thanks for being here.